So yeah, I'm going to just to explain for anybody who doesn't know United Utilities, because the clue isn't really in the title like some of the other water companies. We're one of the larger water companies in England, providing water, drainage, wastewater treatment services to the northwest. And so we serve about 7 million domestic customers, 200,000 businesses, stretch from Scottish borders to Cheshire, and quite a big patch. So it's a huge FTSE 100 listed organisation. I'm going to stay laser-like focused on net zero just for a few minutes on this. And as we were saying, just share some of our really latest work that we just put into our business plan that we published last Monday. I will touch on some resilience and nature bits within that, but I guess I'm going to be unselfishly focused on net zero. And to me, net zero and achieving net zero as a collective society, not just as an organisation, is the first rung of our route to resilience. I always think, and it's interesting how many cross points there are with all the other infrastructure sectors, but we are all on the front foot, really, of feeling climate change, responding to it already as infrastructure operators and managers, and certainly as a water operator. We feel that first and foremost, both whether there's the dry summers we've been experiencing, and we are in kind of more and more active measures to maintain water supplies through those periods, and equally in all these extreme rainfall events, and the drainage system being kind of the lowest point of gravity and having a huge role alongside others in managing drainage and flood management. So we're kind of on the front foot, as are many infrastructure operators. And therefore, net zero to me, if we don't achieve that, I struggle to see in the projections that we have for the second half of this century how we are going to maintain both, keyword both, affordable and resilient water and wastewater services. We are resilient today, made massive progress over the last over recent decades. In our resilience, we will find a route to resilience that is I think, not in question. How affordable it is, I think we can see incremental levels of change, the worse the climate change is in the long term. So with that in mind, we've put an awful lot of effort, our most granular plans, detailed analysis, supported by MOPS actually, and Jacob, so thank you to those teams, in building our plans through particularly to 2030, but very much in that long-term context, through to net zero in scope 1, 2 and 3 by 2050 as our priority. So just to give you a little bit of context, we are a science-based targets company, like many in the room. We were proudly the first in the water sector to get science-based targets for scope 1, 2 and 3 with the SBTI. So you can see our figures that we're working through to 2030, some quite bold ambitions within that for both some dramatic reductions in scope 1 and 2, and equally escalating that scope 3 side of things much more, and recognising that collaboration in the supply chain, as we've been touching on so much. And I'll come on to a lot more in that, because that's a real challenge for us as a sector. So within that, on the left there, we have these 6 pledges that we made in 2020. And the top and tail at 1 and 6 really set out that route to underpin everything in the science-based approach. And it's not all about 2050 and getting to net zero at that point. We all know in this room, it's the pathway to that matters. And so we're desperately trying to find a route to 42% reduction in scope 1 and 2, and 25% reduction despite massive upward pressures, which I'll come on to in a second. And then the 4 middle ones are kind of some of the most pressing priorities where we know we can act both cost effectively and technically feasibly. And that isn't always a straightforward thing at scale. So the 2 ticks show some of the ones we've achieved. Greening our electricity. So we've done a lot of the cheaper elements already. We're quite advanced relative to many. And that decarbonises, to some level at least, an awful lot of our operational emissions. But there are so many more other things to come to. We're now focused, particularly a bit of a war on fossil fuels, as I'll come on to, but greening our fleets in quite ambitious timescales. We can see various routes to that, but heavy goods elements still a challenge. And then we're a big landowner in the northwest. And again, linking to nature and that whole systems thinking of our source catchments and so on. Big efforts on peatland and woodland. So quite bold progress already, and equally quite bold challenges. And so this kind of, that lump there is what keeps me awake at night, frankly. So this, in our annual report back in July, we put our head above the parapet and continuing to be quite leading in our disclosures. We had to go at our first transition plan as part of our TCFD. We mapped out, we've updated all that as part of our latest price review assessment, so there is some real numbers behind this graphs, albeit it is partly illustrative at the same time. But you can see some of the progress we've been making in reducing our emissions by particularly focusing on electricity, but particularly in scope 3, this dark blue bit, and with all the political agenda and the new Environment Act for the water sector, and being the wettest region in the northwest of England, we're 28% wetter. We have more CSOs, storm overflows. We have a huge capital investment programme coming up in AMP8 and probably even more in AMP9. We haven't built that in yet because we didn't want to flag uncertainty, back to Lord Debon's point, but almost certainly a business as usual route will be an even bigger peak. So we have this huge challenge to outperform massive growth pressures, particularly in scope 3. So all those in the supply chain, I'm really keen to talk to you. We're trying to do a lot of what we've been hearing from other partners and bake this in. But equally, these bits at the bottom not to be ignored. How do we lock in the electricity improvements and go further on clean energy? We've got lots of opportunity to do that. And how do we unpick some really stubborn bits in our process emissions, which are really quite systemic and integrated into our infrastructure. So the exciting bit, I think, Ofwat, thank you, James, wherever James is in the room, has the most significant measures and incentives in our price review submission through for 2025 to 2030. So that they have really moved forward themselves. We've tried to entirely embrace and embed that. The instruction to us at the price review from DEFRA, the Environment Agency, and Ofwat as our kind of main regulators was to take net zero seriously and effectively comply with the National Climate Change Act. So we've done exactly that, and we need to make bold progress against that peak that I was just showing, and to maintain a science-based trajectory. We've gone quite large on a big carbon-focused programme through to 2030. So just working from left to right and giving you a few of the solutions and the package of work that we've done. So I guess the first thing is we've tried, before we even look at carbon, we've tried to integrate it through absolutely everything we do. So we've costed carbon in a £13.7 billion programme that we've just built. Every element of it has been carbon assessed and carbon optimized. We think we've avoided and deferred about 40%, similar to the highways example. But through the planning that we've already done and deferring and avoiding emissions in that route, and actually in our base operation through a focus on efficiency, more leakage reduction, more working with customers on how they use water, how they use sewers, how we manage our sludge management activities, we can get more efficiency. So that's all kind of baked in and integrated as the lion's share of stuff. But that really doesn't touch the size when you've got that massive growth dimension, let alone we're trying to do the opposite to that and get to 42% reduction. So therefore, we implemented and have created a quite serious package of work, a £196 million programme where carbon has been for the first time the primary driver for investment, and using some of the mechanisms that Ofwat have introduced. So we're really keen to work with them through submission last Monday through to determination next Christmas in how we can hold on to this and really embed some of this, because otherwise we simply will not be a science-based target company. It cannot. We need to start investing for carbon as a primary driver. So just to bring a few packages to light, kind of the first kind of solid package where we can act really cost effectively, technologically feasible, if I can even say it, is really a bit of a war on fossil fuels and really trying to take that out as the first rung. So a big focus on fleet. You can see there are three elements of that green fleet by 2028 package, particularly more and more able to deploy in the kind of light good end of the spectrum, more challenging in the heavy goods fleet. So we've got kind of a big biomethane linking with our sludge benefits, circular economies, all that kind of focus through that, and then more innovative stuff in this further reductions over here. Also on our property and on our site, we also use quite a lot of fossil fuels on our site in our operations. Then moving through into our land, we've done peatland and woodland for many years. We want to do even more. The benefits of that grow over time and really multiply and compound as they establish. This massive focus on process emissions, which is a core sector, a core issue for the whole sector. We know we've been under quantifying them and underrepresenting them. They're really baked into our wastewater infrastructure, so there's no quick fixes. But we think we've got some answers, and we know some of the other water companies do as well, to really push forward on how we measure them and therefore can manage them better within the AMP8 period by 2030. That's a real enabler, and we think as a sector, we know by 2030 we'll really be able to move forward on that kind of Achilles heel. And then recognising a bit of an adaptive approach in all of this and not knowing kind of where we are. It's really hard to predict in this cycle where we might be in 3 to 5 years with these technologies and their cost-benefit positions. We're proposing a package of work where we will chase a number of things and see which ones we can make stick in the latter part of the 5-year period to 2030. More on HGVs, more in our catchments, more on those process emissions, bringing in chemicals as a scope 3 area of our supply chain. So a really integrated package of activity, quite a bold scale and size. the most granular and advanced stuff that we've ever done. So I'm really quite excited that we can lock onto that and move forward with carbon as a primary goal for the first time. And I'll leave it there. Thank you very much.